Hello everyone, and welcome to a super special video. It is set release time for March of the Machines, which means it is time for Crim and I to count down the best cards from March of the Machines for Standard and Pioneer and Modern, and that's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of days, starting with Standard. Crim, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me.
Yo, I'm excited. Some sweet cards. This set is kind of wild. It feels like okay, well, Seth, I don't think you've seen this movie, but it feels like Avengers Endgame, but with magic. So
that's an X-Men movie, right?
that's an X-Men movie.
Okay.
So for simplicity's sake, that's an X-Men movie. So
I figured it was either that or Harry Potter, one or the other. The two things everyone else knows that I don't know. Yeah.
No, and that I'm glad that you just have a checklist that you're just going down. It's not Lord of the Rings. It's not, okay, it's X-Men.
Cross it off. Yeah, X-Men. It must be X-Men. Anyway, we got some cool cards to talk about, so we should probably jump right into it and count down our top 10 cards for Standard. Before we do, though, a couple of super quick reminders. One is, if you need any of these cards, you can snag them from our sponsor, Card Kingdom, over at cardkingdom.com/MTG And like usual, this is kind of a hybrid list. Crim made a list, I made a list. We mashed it together for this video. If you want to see our individual top 10 lists, there's an article on the website. I'll link it in the description. Anyway, let's count down the top 10 Standard cards from March of the Machines, starting with number 10 on our list. We actually got a reprint that hasn't been in Standard for a while, but was really good in Standard last time, in Stoke the Flames. At first glance, it doesn't look great. 4 mana for 4 damage, but it has Convoke. So a lot of times you're casting this for 2 mana or 1 mana or even free, and then it's ridiculous. Crim, I'm sure you remember this. This was really good last time it was in Standard, but we had Hordeling Outburst in Standard, which would like put 3 tokens on the battlefield and then you just burn your opponent a ton. Do you think it'll be as good this time? Like, can you just slot this into the top tier mono red deck and like go to town, or do you gotta build around it more than that, you think?
I think okay, let's just say 3 damage or 3 mana deal 4, right? Like I could still see this being
That's
something good, right? Like obviously the best case scenario is you explode with a bunch of creatures out on the board and it's somewhat free, I guess. But yeah, like even if I'm paying 2 to 3 mana just for 4 damage, I think that's still pretty good. I don't know if it'll be as explosive as it was when it was in Standard last. Because back then, as you had mentioned, Hordeling Outbursts, you had lots of things that just like spawned a ton of creatures, right? We do have the one thing now that it's like Kadaltha Rebirth or whatever.
Yeah.
But like I don't know if that's like something that you're gonna see a lot of in Standard yet. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something that happens this set and that card blows up. But I think Stoke the Flames can exist regardless if there's a Hordeling Outburst or not. So I think this card's gonna be decent this time around.
Yeah, I mean, I expect you to slot this right into the mono red decks. If you look at the burn we have right now, it's like Play with Fire, Lightning Strike. Those are the 2 kind of staple burn spells for mono red aggro. I think this is just the 3rd one. And as you said, even if you're casting it for 3 mana, for a standard burn spell that can hit face or can hit a creature or can hit a battle, which could be relevant in this Standard, the rate is good enough. So I'm pretty excited for this one. But let's keep moving on. Number 9 on our list, Crim. We got a card. I know this is a card when I first saw it, I was like coming up with janky combos for the back side of it, but this is just kind of a good card, right? RONA, Herald of Invasion. It reminds me a little bit of Jace Vryn's Prodigy almost, as that legendary looter with upside. But Crim, what do you think about this one in Standard?
I mean, for that exact reason, the last time we had, I gotta respect just a good card, a good looter like this, right? This does more than just loot, so immediately, whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap RONA, Herald of Invasion, that's big. I think that's big because there are a silly amount of legendaries in the Age of Commander and whatnot being printed into Standard. Joda decks, start to get a little more tools to filter through their deck. But on top of that, this just seems like a solid body, a solid body, a 1/3 that can then flip over to becoming something bigger, a 5/5 that does even more, right? So I like this card. It's nothing flashy. It's just a good card.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. We have dedicated legendary decks in Standard, which this is going to go off in some sort of Rafine Esper Legends deck. You'll do so much looting, you'll never have problems, flooding out or not finding action. we have a lot of decks that care about filling the graveyard. Like, a lot of people are trying to reanimate Atraxa, and just being able to pitch your Atraxa early in the game is really strong as well. So I think this is just like a generically good card, and its stats are good. It's a 1/3 compared to Jace was what, a 0/2. So this actually can kind of hold down the ground against some of the soldier creatures like Thalias and Lorens, and some of this actually blocks those pretty effectively. And then the backside, I don't know how often, like, I don't think it's your focus that you're going to try to pay 5 or 6 mana and flip this. There's going to be times when it happens, but if you do get to that side's like kind of just hilarious. Like, being able to exile cards, cast things for free, getting the, like, a little bit of a Phyrexian Obliterator or Vindicator aspect where whenever it takes damage, it triggers. It seems super, super fun. So I imagine, like, you're not playing this to try to turbo flip it, right? You kind of play this and, like, do the control thing, and then you're like, oh, my opponent's out of hands. I might as well flip this over and just smash him to death, or out of cards in hand. I might as well just flip this and smash him to death, or whatever, is I assume how you're going to play this most often.
Yeah, pretty much. And, like, I don't know, we kind of roughly talked about it on the podcast with Richard, but we're seeing more activated abilities, so Power Stones. Though, like, are those finally, like, good? Like, do those matter now? I don't know.
They get better. I'm still not sticking Karn in my decks, but I could see, like, a little bit of extra value from those Power Stones, because there are a bunch of these, like, expensive activated ability flip cards, and Power Stones are great for paying for those. So
Karn Living Legacy is questionably playable?
Make it work, Crim. Make it work. I dare you.
Okay.
Let's keep moving on. Number 8 on our list. We got what I think is one of the best removal spells in our new standard format in Pylon. Pylon, a little bit like Stoke the Flame, 4 mana to destroy a creature or planeswalker. Looks a little bit steep, but it has Convoke. So this is often going to be 3 mana or 2 mana. Plus you get to Surveil too. So if you think about this, at 3 mana, this is kind of on curve, right? That's Murderous Rider, that's Hero's Downfall. At 2 mana, this is the best removal spell in Standard. It's like a go for the throat with no restrictions. It can also hit Planeswalkers and can also Surveil. Crim, you're the control mage. In some ways, this is probably at its worst in control decks that don't have many creatures, and going to be at its best in, like, Esper Legends or other creature decks that have a lot of bodies on the battlefield. But what do you think? How good will this one be for Standard?
I mean, control in this current Standard has taken on the form of just having threats and creatures now. So the days of just, like, not having anything to do and then just passing are over, unfortunately. And I do think that even, let's just say, like you had mentioned, even if I just had one creature, a Miser creature, to Convoke this with, that's still amazing, because I got to Surveil too and blow up anything I wanted. Anything earlier than that, like that, I am way above rate. So I think this card is, also pretty cracked in Standard. I think it does exactly what, like, it's more than just removal. The Surveil adds to it, and it can reduce its own cost, so I love that.
And I think you're right. Even your control decks, you're going to have, Wandering Emperor making tokens. You're going to have Wedding Announcement making tokens. So it's not really the days of, like, I don't impact the board at all, and then I Etherling you on turn 20 and it kills you in 3 turns. Like, that's just not the world we live in anymore for control. So yeah,
unfortunately.
Well, that's debatable, I guess. But yeah, Pylon, I expect we'll be seeing a lot of this one. But let's move forward. Crim, speaking of control decks adding creatures to the to the battlefield, bodies to the battlefield, number 7 on our list. We got another reprint. Only 2 reprints on our list, but the second one, Monastery Mentor, returning to Standard. This is a card I associate pretty heavily with, like, Vintage and Legacy, where this is, used to be at least, one of the best finishers for some decks. You just sling all your cheap spells and make a huge board. What about Standard, though, Crim? Like, how good do you think Mentor will be in Standard this go around?
I am so excited. This is exactly the card I've been waiting to play with. This, funny enough, one of the most hyped things I have from March of the Machines is a reprint. This card was like something you'd play out of the sideboard last time, it was in Standard. But, like, I think with the way the shape this Standard is like shaping up to be, between battles, all these, like, efficient spells like Consider, you have Wedding Announcements now. I've kind of mentioned this on the podcast, but I think there's a tokens deck. And also there's just so many non-creature spells. prowess and like getting a trigger off of non-creature spells and a token out off of that is amazing. How about, you know, maybe is it time for Jeskai? Is it time for Mardu? Who knows? Because we have Thrawn, right? Or what is the 2-mana like Pinger Lord, the one that drains 2 and then gains 2, right? Whatever.
Oh,
drains
Ron,
2 whenever anything dies. Yeah, Thrawn. You have Jeskai. You have Urbrask's Forge. You also have Jaya, which we talked about. She hasn't really shown up, but, you know, maybe Jaya plus her prowess token, Monastery Mentor. Like, there's Chrome Host Seed Shark or whatever, which is like the Shark Typhoon, but, you know, with Incubate. And, yeah, like, there's just lots of token strategies right now. And this is just, I feel like in this standard, it's going to feel better than ever. There's so many non-creature spells running around.
That is true. Like, even a lot of our like battles are adding another non-creature spell that's probably going to see some play to the format. There's lots of planeswalkers running around. I'm really hyped for this card too, just because there's so many different possibilities. Like, you mentioned token decks. It seems really sweet in token style decks. There's also a lot of spell slinger cards I've been realizing. No one's really put them together, but I can imagine like a blue-white spell slinger deck. Yeah, like Mercurial Spell Dancer, a bunch of good spells to go with that. Haughty Jin. If you go into Jeskai, I think Brawl and Carry Zev's really powerful. You still have like Smoldering Egg in the format. You got Vindictive Flamestoker. You got the Shark. You got Third Path Iconoclast. So there are a lot of possibilities for this card, and it could be a control card as well. Like, a lot of control decks are playing a lot of non-creature spells, and that's something you see in older formats where sometimes you like play the Mentor in your sideboard, and then once your opponent realizes you're kind of like mostly playing planeswalkers and stuff and take out some of their targeted removal, you can bring this in, and a Monastery Mentor unchecked closes out the game really fast because all the tokens have prowess too. So you spend one turn building a board of tokens, and the next turn you got a decent shot at being able to just alpha strike and kill your opponent. So yeah, lots of potential for Monastery Mentor in Standard.
Mentor's even scary when you think about like Emperor, the Wandering Emperor still in the format. Yeah, like there's just so many things. Yeah, like this is a solid finisher.
And this is outside the scope of today's video, but this will also be the first time it's in an arena, right? Like we have. Am I wrong?
Maybe? I think so.
I
don't think it's been on Arena. Yeah, I don't think it's been on Arena.
Which, I mean...
You're right. Actually, I don't think it's been on Arena.
Yeah, I'm trying to double check right now. Yeah, it's not on Arena. So yeah, this will be the first time it'll be in like Historic or Explore, which is kind of interesting too, even though our topic's Standard today. But anyway, let's keep counting down our list. Next up, we have a card I'm really high on, Crim, and you gotta maybe talk me down a little bit on KROXA and KUNOROS. So when I see this card, I see just a ridiculous Magic card. It's a 6-mana 6/6, Vigilance, Lifelink, and Menace. That's already pretty good. And then when it ETBs or attacks, you can essentially escape a creature from your graveyard for free. Like, you reanimate a creature, but you get to exile 5 cards. So my question to you is, Crim, is this not the new best reanimation spell in Standard? Like, we have top tier decks that are built around filling the graveyard and trying to reanimate a KROXA, using stuff like Cruelty of Gix, which is 1 less mana. Is it worth it to pay that 1 extra mana to be able to get a 6/6 Vigilance, Menace, Lifelinking body? One of the things I love about this is even if your graveyard gets shut down, you're still getting a 6/6, which is so much different than most reanimation spells, where if your graveyard gets shut down, they're really bad. They're dead cards, essentially. But this one, you're adding a worm coil-like body to the battlefield, essentially. So what do you think about this one for Standard, Crim? I have this like number 2 on my list, I think. Am I overrating it, or does this card have some potential?
You really love this card.
I'm so high on this card.
I guess... my problem with this card is that, this is a sweet reanimation target that can then pull essentially 2 bodies, right? If I reanimate this, and I can also then, escape 5, reanimate a second threat. Mm-hmm. So, there are games where this is just going to be able to do that, but, I'm sorry, a 6-mana 6/6, if they hate out my graveyard, Trespasser running around, all these things that are just passively hating your graveyard, I don't know if this card is good enough.
But think of it this way, Crim. We're already using Invoke Justice or Cruelty of Gix to reanimate. isn't this just an upgrade over those? Like, Invoke Justice, if your graveyard gets shut down, it's like a downright bad card. With KROXA and KUNOROS, if your graveyard gets shut down, yeah, it's sad, but you still get a 6/6 lifelinker with Menace and Vigilance. So,
but you might...
Yeah, not
you
not
might
worth
get
it.
more if you have so Invoke Justice. You still have the 4/1/1 counters. It's a whole mana cheaper.
That's true.
And on top of that, the cards like that you had mentioned are 1 mana less.
Yep.
And have like a little bit more versatility in that, like, Invoke Justice hits a Planeswalker. It can bring back an enchantment or something if need be. This is only going to hit a creature where, yes, I agree that, like, whatever the thing of Gix, Cruelty of Gix, that only gets a creature, but it has the 2 modes prior. So, example, I can go and get rid of your Planeswalker, your Wandering Emperor, and then I can go tutor up an answer to your Trespasser. So, like, I don't know. I think this is okay. I don't know why. Like, I think you might be a bit high on this, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see where this card lands.
Yeah, we will find out. We will find out. I have very high hopes for it, but I could also be overrating it. But let's move into the top 5 on our list. We are entering the world of battles. Battle number 1 on our countdown, Invasion of New Phyrexia, which when it comes into play, you make a bunch of knights, and then you get to flip into a pretty interesting Teferi. So, Crim, battle number 1, what do you think about this one for Standard?
I mean, I like it just for its front side. I think the way you look at these battles, we kind of also talked about that on the podcast, is how good is the front side? Assume there is no backside, right? Like, because some games you may not ever see the backside, you may not ever need to see the backside. So just being able to spawn a ton of like 2/2 knights on their own, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And, I'd probably play this in a Monastery Mentor style deck. Just saying. But yeah, like, I really like the fact that the front side just spawns a ton of bodies. And, like, it's only, 6 to flip?
6
right?
defense
like,
counters.
6 defense. I keep calling it loyalty, but, like, defense counters. That's 3 knights. So how you can look at that is for a total of 5 mana and forcing the opponent to remove or interact with you. Or you get the backside of a Teferi. Battles are going to be interesting just because there are going to be games where you don't need the backside. So, like, why would I send 6 damage at a battle as opposed to an opponent? The games where you want to grind out your opponent, the flexibility, the slow chip at things. Like, I could send 4 at you and 2 at Teferi, or, the battle, and slowly chip away at it. So, I like the fact that this card, the front side, just eventually feeds into itself so that you can get a Teferi. So, that alone makes it quite nice. And obviously, it's scaling with the later the game. The better your threats, the better your front side's gonna be.
Yeah, this is one of those battles where there's really no battle tax. Like, 2 and X to make 2/2s is what this would cost if it was a sorcery. So you're already off to a good start. We've talked about earlier a lot of token synergies. I know token's one of those archetypes I feel like every set I get hyped for, and then ever since like Streets of New Capenna, like, oh, Jetmir, Janie Faye, and like it's never really became like a top tier archetype, but I'm really hopeful that maybe that's about to change. We got Mentor now, we got Invasion of New Phyrexia now, and then I think this is sneakily one of the easiest battles to flip. Yes, 6 is a high-ish number. What do we range from? 3 to 7, I think, is defense counter, the range of defense counters. So this is kind of on the high end, but you got to remember, you're not going to cast this in the early game. It's going to be a mid to late game card, and you're going to be making 2, 3, 4, 5 2/2s, which can then attack and flip it. And then I like how the card snowballs with itself. Like, you can flip it and start making emblems to protect your knights and pump your knights, or the Teferi, it's not busted. It's not Teferi Hero of Dominaria or something, but it does what you want a Planeswalker to do. It generates card advantage, it works as removal, so it does kind of hit all those marks, and it's going to be well defended, presumably, because the knights you're making with the front side have vigilance, so you can swing and flip the battle, and you'll still have your knights back to block for Teferi if you need to. So I like this card a lot, too. I think this card is just, like, a really solid card on rate, and a really cool use of battles, seeing them flip into Planeswalkers.
It's also kind of weird. This is, like, the least Teferi looking card that is Teferi.
Teferi, like, working with knights, is not something that I would associate with Teferi for sure.
Yeah, like, if this is very specific to knights. again, Circle of Loyalty should have been reprinted. I'm just saying. It was. We were just ahead.
Yeah,
we were ahead.
To very secretly a Circle of Loyalty fan. Confirmed.
Yeah. We were just like, what is it, 3 years ahead?
3 or 4 years. Yeah, we're not idiots. We're just, ahead of our time. Let's move on to number 4 on our list. We have a non-battle Knight Errant of Eos, and this card, pretty sweet. So again, expensive, 5 mana for a 4/4, but it has Convoke, so you're probably going to cast it on the cheap, and then it should be
really a 5 mana.
Yeah, it's really like a 3 mana or maybe even free mana card, and then it's going to draw you 2 creatures presumably when it enters the battlefield. Crim, what are you imagining with this one? So we've talked about knights. This is a knight. It's also a human, so it has 2 relevant creature types. Plus, like, even without the creature types, you can just play this in like white weenie, right? Just like convoke it in and draw some cards.
Yeah, like, I mean, we have wedding announcement. We have like wedding announcement stuff to help like flood the board. Of course, this wants to hit creatures, right? So I'm imagining something like soldiers. You could even play it in something like any creature dense deck. You could even play it in Legends if you wanted. Yeah, it's not legendary itself. It's just nice to know that you can invoke out a 4/4 that can get you 2 bodies. This is just a solid. Like, again, nothing too flashy, but this is pretty darn good. Like, this is just always going to get you value, allow you to keep gas going in the long game. It's also a decent body. A 4/4 is nothing to laugh at. And yeah, like, there's the soldier decks flood the board pretty quick. So I don't see why they couldn't play something like this.
What was the elephant, Crim, that was like the same card except to put counters on the things that convoked it? You're Loxodon something. It reminds me of
something from Guilds.
Yeah, it reminds me of that card a lot. Like, you got the same rate, you got the same stats, except instead of growing the creatures on the battlefield, you're generating card advantage for the future. And like you said, we already got a lot of homes for this. There's a lot of creature decks in Standard where this should pretty consistently be drawing you multiple cards. It also synergizes pretty well with some popular effects, like Adeline is a big one because Adeline has Vigilance. So you're able to swing and then convoke post-combat to draw a card. So I think the floor of this card is, I think you're going to see this in the sideboard of a ton of creature decks, because this is one of your best cards to like help you keep up in this grindy meta, help you rebuild, like almost like Recruitment Officer, such an important card for aggro to be able to have a chance, because there's so many grindy, removal heavy, sweeper heavy decks in the format. I think worst case it's going to be that, and best case this could be a card that's showing up in a lot of main decks as well.
I just don't see why you would sideboard this. I think this is definitely a main deckable card. This card is just so good.
I just worry about like soldiers as a deck where I'm kind of like, yeah, it's great, but can I play a non-soldier in my soldier main deck? Like, am I minimizing my synergies, diminishing my synergies too much if I do that? That would be my
only thing.
In generic, like white aggro, like just no creature type doesn't matter, just my Skrelvs and Adolines and whatever. Easy main deck 4 of, I think. But when you get to some of the tribal decks, or even like the legend deck, like, am I diminishing my synergies by playing a non-legend too much, or is the upside of drawing 2 cards going to be worth it? I think it'll be tested in those decks at a minimum, but it's a very, very good card. Well, let's move on. We got more battles to talk about. Coming in at number 3 on our list, we have Invasion of TOLVADA. So Invasion of TOLVADA, another one of those battles that's just no tax, 5 mana to reanimate a permanent, and then you flip around into like a souped up, even better Bitter Blossom effect. If you look at like Obsidat's Aid, or we talked about Invoke Justice, 5 mana to reanimate a permanent, that's how much it costs to reanimate a permanent. So then, even if you never flip this battle, it's already a fine card, and if you do decide to flip the battle, the backside's actually pretty good. You're essentially making a 2/1 flying lifelinker each turn. Yeah. And it triggers on your end step. So if you flip this during combat, you're going to get that first token right away, which is one of the drawbacks of some of the creature battles that I've kind of found the more I've thought about it, is like you flip them during combat and then you get the creature, but that creature is not really doing anything until the next turn. This is going to give you immediate value. So Crim, is this the new? I was high on KROXA and KUNOROS. Is this the way we should be reanimating a Troxa in Standard then?
I think so. I think, like, if whatever reanimation plan you have, the best part is this doesn't even have to be a reanimator deck. I think now at this point, this card just makes it so that you should have Graveyard Hate. at all points of the game. Because Invasion of Tolvada just can bring back a wedding announcement that has fallen, a fable, anything. Yep. This card is just so good. And you're already getting a killer rate on the front side. Like, I would do that anyways. And then you're telling me there's just additional upside. Why the heck not? Why wouldn't you play this? This has to be this and maybe Invoke. Well, actually, no. This might even be better than Invoke Justice. Although you lose out on the 4/1/1 counters, this is only 1 white, 1 black as opposed to quad white. So
way easier to cast.
The casting on this is easier. I don't know. I think this card is just probably the best use of a reanimation spell that you can. Yeah, because it brings anything, a non-land or a non-battle permanent.
Which is huge in our current, if you look at a Orzhov mid-range or control deck, they don't have that many creatures usually, and most of their creatures are I am playing Ambitious Farmhand or stuff that you're not really interested in reanimating, but they have a lot of good permanents, getting back wedding announcements, getting back Planeswalkers, Eternal Wanderers, Kayas, things like that, Vroskas. Yep. That's very, very powerful. Plus, you get some natural synergy, like the Restoration of Ajanos, an easy way and playable way to get something in your graveyard, Fable the Mirror Breaker if you get a red. It's trivial to stock your graveyard in the standard format. And then I actually think this is a battle that could be worth flipping. I think you're playing it because it's a good reanimation spell, but I think there's going to be situations, especially in our grindy sweeper heavy meta, where you're going to actually focus on giving up 5 damage to flip around to have this enchantment that's hopefully going to give you recurring threats that are going to survive whatever disruption your opponent's playing. So I think there is some merit to trying to get the Broken Sky on the battlefield as well, even though, like you said, the main plan is going to be getting something big back from your graveyard.
I mean, I know for a fact that, if any deck that is going to care about a life total race, this is going to swing that in your favor, right? All your creature tokens will have +1 and life, not just things that come off the Bitter Blossom. So every token you've made, again, just showing that tokens, there's got to be something with tokens here. Tokens just seem better than they ever were because now you are rewarded for going wide by swinging into battles.
Well, let's move on. Speaking of battles, number 2 on our list, we got Invasion of GOBAKHAN, our new white Thoughtseize, and this card's really, really good. So 2 mana, you get a Apollo version of Thoughtseize. You get a card out of your opponent's hand. They can cast it, but it costs you more. And then the thing I love about this battle is it's really priced to flip. Only 3 defense counters, which is as low as it goes. And the backside does something right away. On your end step, you put a counter on everything unattacked, and you get some protection for your creatures. To me, this feels like just a staple for any sort of aggro, go wide token, soldiers, aggro style deck. Crim, what do you think about this one? As the control mage, are you a little scared about this card if you're on the control side and it comes out from the soldier deck or whatever?
I mean, oh yeah. Look, it does everything you don't want it to do, right? This is perfect for tempo. This is perfect for whatever deck that has white, really. It's so aggressively costed with such a low amount of defense loyalty that this is going to flip. This is definitely going to flip. I don't know. And then the backside, inevitably, when it gets there, it is a bubble against any kind of destroy effects, right? Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And then it grows your board on top of that. Yeah. This is exactly what you want. This is such an aggressive the costed battle. This has to be the best battle. This has to be the best battle in Standard. I think it is so darn good.
It's definitely, it's on my short list of best battles for sure. And also worth mentioning, I think we covered most of it, but we also have a +1/+1 counter theme that's coming in this set with a new Hardened Scales effects, a lot of stuff to interact with counters. I think this is a battle that you play with the intention being to flip it as quickly as possible. So you might get some extra upside there with modified shenanigans or the new +1/+1 counter themes. But I think as long as you're playing a lot of creatures, which shouldn't be too hard for a white deck in Standard to do, this is going to be one of the best cards and most important cards in your deck. Although it is a little sad against Farewell and also the new Exile Wrath. So there are a couple of cards that kind of hose it. Not that makes it bad, but worth keeping in mind. You can do everything right and still get gotten this Standard because of the Exile Wrath.
I mean, if this gets a Farewell though, like in the opener, it now costs 8 mana to Farewell, right?
True.
Or Sunfall, like a sweeper that I also am excited for, but that would then move it to 7 mana, right? So like there's a lot of like this is just a white Thoughtseize. This is really good.
Well, yeah, you said that Invasion of GOBAKHAN might be the best battle for Standard, but we actually have one other battle ahead of it, coming in at number 1 on our list. Invasion of Florida, or FIORA.
FIORA.
Oh man, this card's sweet. 6 mana Wrath. 6 mana Wrath, except it's got a ton of upside. It can be a Plague Wind if you're legendary or non-legendary. Only 4 defense counters, and a pretty powerful backside. Like, yeah, it's a creature that needs to attack to do things, but this is like drawing you cards, it's flipping battles, it's sniping planeswalkers. This card feels like it's the very opposite end of Invasion of GOBAKHAN. Invasion of GOBAKHAN is like the best battle if you're playing like this aggro creature tempo style. To me, this seems like one of the best battles for like mid-range and control style decks, legendary style decks, and I expect this one to see a lot of play. But what do you think, Crim? It is 6 mana. Is a 6 mana Wrath? Is that good enough for Standard?
I mean, we were just talking about, like, Farewell. That's a 6 mana Wrath that exiles, so obviously worth the 6 mana, but this... Okay, like, this is neck and neck with Invasion of GOBAKHAN. I do really love GOBAKHAN as one of the best, but this also has quite the appeal because that's only 4 defense loyalty. That's only 4 defense loyalty on the front side there, so it shouldn't be hard to flip and get Marchesa. Once you get Marchesa, you can then flip other battles if you wanted to by swinging with it. And then on top of that, like, it has its last ability at the beginning of your upkeep. If you haven't been dealt combat damage since your last turn, you draw a card and lose a life. Yeah, I kind of love that. This grinds. This card super duper grinds. And you can choose one or both when it comes to the sweeper. So it's worst case scenario, you need to nuke the whole board, including your own, or you can just choose one and have it be a one-sided board wipe, where this could be like a Plague Wind kind of thing. So this is just very good at 6 mana.
And the 4 defense counters line up really well with Sheoldred. That's one of the things that I think is probably going to be a popular line, that you like wrath your opponent's stuff, you keep your Sheoldred, immediately flip the battle, get the Marchesa, snowball that into the wind. Plus, it seems super good in some of the legendary decks. We have decks in Standard that are built around the legendary theme, and then this is kind of like a 6 mana Plague Wind a lot of the time, where you're not going to lose any of your stuff, and your opponent's hopefully losing all or at least most of their stuff in the right matchup. I don't know if you'll main deck it in Esper Legends, but I think worst case seems like a great sideboard card in Esper Legends. So yeah, I'm super hyped about Invasion of Floria as well. So anyway, that brings us to the end of our top 10 March of the Machines cards for Standard. So you've seen our list, we've counted it down. Let us know in the comments what we got right, what we got wrong, what you're hyped about. Crim, thanks so much for doing it, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk some Pioneer. So until then, everyone.
Sure will.
Have a good one, and we will talk to you soon.